Okay, hopefully I don't have any crashes this time while trying to do this tutorial. So a student found this tutorial using Blender to create this reptilian skin shader, procedural shader. And the student's going to animate in Cinema 4D even though they're modeling in Blender. And so the question is how to recreate this in Cinema 4D if you're not familiar with some of the shading nodes. So I brought the little image here on the screen. This is Ducky 3D. That's I've done the original tutorial again that I'm going to try to recreate here. But a shout out to Ducky. I subscribed to him. He does some really nice stuff, especially related to motion graphics using Blender. So anyways, I'm going to put that away. I've got my little scene set up. Oops. And so I've got some little skin-like shader. And obviously there's you can tweak these settings to taste to get it to be what you would like, but is it similar to what he has? The one thing I would say is make sure that you have a lighting scenario set up. I've got a little area light, putting some illumination down, and I also have a dome light. I'll toggle these on and off. Just you can get a sense of what's going on, right? If you're trying to figure out what the material's doing, if you don't really have an environment with some lighting, so it's not going to go very well. So I have an area light, and then the dome light. I have a texture map in there that I got from the asset browser. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this real quick. Let's delete that tag, and let's go to the materials, and I'm going to create something, a new standard material. I'll drag and drop it onto the sphere, and you can go ahead and hide that. I'm going to turn down the reflection and turn the roughness up. So about like so. All right, let's start creating some nodes. We're going to use the plus sign in here to bring up any little nodes that we want to get. You could also, within the interface, click on the little side panel here. I'm just going to click on it here so it doesn't shift my existing shading network. We're going to need a few different nodes. So the first one we're going to need is noise. And if I type in noise, I get max on noise, or the old legacy one. Don't use that one. Use max on noise. And if I just double click, that comes into the scene. And I'm going to just ramp this right into the color of that standard material. Right off the bat, the color has changed. It's lighter, but it's hard to see any noise. And that's because the noise pattern is so small. So in the Blender tutorial, you had to create additional nodes related to the mapping. Here in Cinema, on the noise node, if I just go down to the input, I can just change the overall scale. And I'm just going to put in 100. And you can see there's the noise pattern. The other thing about the noise, so there's the max on noise, and within that you can create a particular type of noise. It says noise, it actually is Perlin noise, but there's a bunch of different ones that give different patterns, right? But we want a Voronoi. Here's the first one of that, which is more kind of rounded cellular. I'm not going to do the second one. Actually, I want to do the third one. And this gives us the pattern somewhat similar to the tutorial. And I'm going to make this maybe a little, oops, let's make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, we'll just call it 150 for now. So that's great. Oh, and then let's create one more node here. And we're going to create a ramp. So this is just a color ramp, and we will put, I'm going to just drag and drop this to, oops. We want the alt input, and then we'll put that into the color. And just so we can see it's working a certain way, I'll make that white kind of a red, just so you can see it. Okay, we'll come back and change that later, obviously. Okay, So in the tutorial, the whole idea is that we would create one noise that's got these larger skin cells, and then we would have a second version of this that's smaller, and then we would blend in between those. So I'm just going to hold down Command to duplicate this material. And I'm going to leave it exactly the same, but this time I'll just make it 50 in the scale. And if I put that in there, you can see there's the smaller. Okay, well, I don't want to spend my time toggling back and forth with each of these. What I need to do is create a layer, right? So I'll just type layer, and here's our color layer. And this is just almost like a little Photoshop document. And I'm going to put this one into the base color, and I'll put this one into the color for layer number 2, and then the out color will go back into that input. So right now what we're seeing is the smaller noise pattern. We have the larger one up here, and the idea is that we need to create and use another image that's going to work as, move this over, the mask for this layer, right? Because this is like a Photoshop document. You can see it over here. If I toggle the layer on and off, you can see the one that is underneath, which is the base layer. And if I turn this on, I get this one on the top. You can actually blend them just like you would let's just do overlay. You could blend them just like you could a Photoshop document, right? And create some interesting things as well. But we'll just, because we're trying to recreate the tutorial, I'll keep it normal. And let's create one more noise. And again, since I already have a max on noise down here, I'm just going to hold down Command and duplicate. And this time on this one, what I want is another ramp. This ramp color here, I'm just going to make this white. Okay, there we go. And I also want a different type, all input, general input, and alt input. And I'm going to put this underneath the mask. The other thing here is I don't want to use the Voronoi for this. I want to use something else. And I could just use the basic noise. I'm going to use, I think turbulence will probably work well. And on this one, I'm going to make it bigger. So that I'm blending in between these. Let's make sure that I put that back to normal. Yeah. Okay. So now I have big and small being blended around, and on the ramp I can isolate where some of these little changes are happening. Right, so now you can see there's some big nodes, Voronoi cells, and then there's little tiny ones here right, inside of that. Okay, so that's just the color part of that. But what we need to do is make sure that we also get a bump that's part of that. So let me just move everything up a little bit, and I'll click on the plus side. And again, I'll just type. And because I know I need a bump, it's the context is really great in the little search bar there. Okay, so at this point I need the bump map to go into this. And once again, I want to have another little ramp. Almost always using ramps, right, in these scenarios. So I want to take the color information, and in this case, I just want the black and white. The color here, the ramp is going to be used to modify this a little bit differently, but I need these base values, and I'm just going to put this into the input, and this would go in as the texture. And for the bump itself, it automatically recognized, or maybe that's the default, it's height mapped because it's a grayscale image. But already as we look at this, in fact, I'll make it a ridiculous number so we can just see. Right? You can see that it's bumpy right on top of that surface, and we're getting a blend in between these things. But I'm just going to leave it at 1, maybe for the tutorial, I think I'll go up to 2 so that it shows up a little bit better. Okay, we're basically there. I think at this point it's a matter of figuring out what the scale should be of the of that transition, what the size of these should be. Maybe this one should be more like 100, and maybe the tiny cells should be a little bit smaller, like 35 or something. So I get a blend of that. You can see I'm getting these little tiny ones blended in with the big cells, and a lot has to do with this ramp, like where we're going to see that transition. Let's pull it back a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to call that good for now. Now, the other thing that's not working here is we just have a color ramp right now that's just transitioning from black to red. I mean, you could choose to do that. That's fine. I'm going to pick a few colors and invert this just a little bit so that I get in fact, maybe I'll take this color and bring it up here. I don't know, I'm just kind of playing. I think that black got a little too low down in there. Let's bring this one up a little bit. There we go. That's a little more what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's zoom in there and look at that. Right. The last thing here, you can see I'm getting some really nice stuff, but the Voronoi, some of these are really simple. So there's an octaves setting. Basically has to do with, think of this as like the level of detail. I might have to start and restart. That's okay. Yeah, it's a little bit better on some of these. So you can see there's various settings. I could change, probably don't, well, yeah, I could change the seed here. So I get some slight variation in whatever that cell is going to be. So let me go back to our color ramp. And I'm just going to delete some of these, simplify a little bit. Let's delete that one. What I really want is a little bit of that lightness down in there. There we go. That's a little more of what I'm looking for. Nice. Okay, that's a little better. Yeah, I think that's going to work just fine. All right. Let's recap. Oh, just right at 15 minutes. So let's zoom out here. Look at our sphere. Again, so this is all procedural. Let's recap. So we need a bump map. We're going to use ramps in various places to modify the mask that's working between two Maxon noise nodes working with Voronoi as the type. And also, feel free to experiment. We were using the first Voronoi. You could use this one that's a little more rounded and cellular. I have no idea. I'm doing this on the fly. Let's just see. You can see you can get a nice little skin texture even out of that. And it just has to do with how these colors are set up. So actually, let's, maybe because we want it to protrude out, I'm going to make the white and black flip. And which one did I just do that to? That one and that one. Let's do the same here. Right, so here's a different type of skin surface that's more rounded. I don't know if that's really dragon-like, but you know, maybe this is something you can blend between, or you could just layer them on top of each other. We have this noise and this one. We could have more layers. Here's a layer number 2, so maybe you keep 2 at Voronoi, these 2, and then you add a third one on top of it to add some variation in the type of cells that are in there. All right. Hope that helps.